What's going on, guys? This is Martyrs Brigade 99 coming to you once again with another session of Killzone Shadow Fall. Alright guys, this time around we're just going to go ahead and showcase another Killzone map, and this is the forest. Now unfortunately I started a little late into this map. As you guys notice, I came in at around just a little over 3 minutes. With like 3 minutes left into this first mission. Right, but I mean, it's all good because even though I kind of started off a little late, it's still enough to get a good showcase for this particular map. Alright, so it looks like we're on the losing end of the capture and connect mission. But you know, like I said before, it's still early. It's 0-0 at this point. So even though we appear to be down, at least on this mission, we still have enough time to go ahead and win the overall war. Right, so this particular video, I'm just going to go ahead and use the pulver. Right, I know a lot of guys are saying that my crutch is the shotgun. Right, so seeing that they were trying to clown me on the shotgun, I figured I'd go ahead and use a few other weapons. Right, and actually I really like the pulver. You know, it's kind of it gives you more range. Right, you get to work on your aiming a little bit, you know, kind of like one thing I was talking about in previous videos. And actually, you know, there's a lot of weapons just basically have, you know, the properties that they all have. Just, I mean, you know, it just comes with strengths and weaknesses. In other words, you know, it is good to be successful with the shotgun, but it also has its weaknesses. You know, the shotgun is mainly for close quarters combat. Right, when I used to use it, I got outranged all the time. Right, so even though, you know, some people will say, oh, look at you, you're a noob with the shotgun, it's kind of like they would ignore the fact that oftentimes I would get outranged, right, and that I had a slow rate of fire. Right, so I'm just going to go ahead use a different type of weapon that will kind of give me longer range, right, and give me another opportunity to work a little bit on my aiming. Because like I said before, it seems like sometimes when I'm playing, there's some guys, I mean, their aiming is like spot on. It's like as soon as they see me, I'm dead. Right, so I want to kind of get a little better with the aiming. And actually, I'm not really all that bad, right? For the most part, it's just getting used to each individual weapons' properties. Case in point, let's say you use a lot of the assault class, right? Well, if you use the assault class a lot, you'll probably be a lot more comfortable with weapons with a lower recoil, right? Because all of the assault weapons have relatively low recoil, especially when you compare them to most of the assault weapons, right? So if you're only used to assault weapons and then you all of a sudden decide to experiment with some of the support weapons, you know, you may be turned off by them. And you may say to yourself, you know what, let me just go ahead and just go back to assault. Because, you know, it's so easy for a lot of people to get into a comfort zone and to stick with it. Right? I mean, case in point, you know, just because I like the shotgun, actually I'm coming around for the flank, and this is like 5 or 6 kills right here. You know, even though I was comfortable with the shotgun, I didn't want to get to the point to where I depended on it. Right, and actually I don't only use a shotgun, thanks to T-King67. That guy, first off, that guy owns with a minigun, right? And I noticed how often he owns with it, so I went on ahead and experimented with it. And I like the minigun too. And even though the minigun is actually really good, and actually I'll go ahead and showcase some material with that minigun sometime soon. But even though it is real easy to own with the minigun, I mean, that weapon even has its limitations. In other words, high rate of fire, yes. You know, you can pump a lot of rounds real quickly, right? Does it have low recoil? Yes. As a matter of fact, all you have to do is pretty much aim and you're dead on, right? There's pretty much no recoil, right? It's a good stiff feeling weapon. The downside is you can't melee with it, right? You can't melee with it. You can't crouch with it. And you can't do the running slide with it. So in other words, it's so heavy that you can't crouch. So if you're trying to get into one of those small crawl spaces, And actually, I haven't tried it, but I think you're going to have to go ahead and switch over to your sidearm to be able to do that. I haven't tried it, but I'm just thinking that's probably what you'll have to do. But you can't crawl with it. You can't melee with it. So if someone runs up on you, I mean, you're screwed. You can't melee. The only thing, and in addition to that, it has a slow wind up. So granted, if you catch me and you have, let's just say, assault weapon, more than likely you're going to get me, right? Number one, you're going to get me because I have the slow wind up, and this is only, this is mainly for those with like bad aiming, like maybe they're new to the game, right? Or maybe they're new to first-person shooters. So let's just say your aiming is not all the best. If I'm able to wind up that, if I'm able to get past that startup, you're going to be doomed. But even while I'm starting up, you know, if you're able to, let's just say melee me, I wouldn't be able to do anything, right? Because you can't melee with that weapon. So each weapons have their own properties, and these properties makes the game, and these individual properties make the game overall balanced in my personal opinion. In other words, the shotgun is good, but it has range limitations. The minigun is good, but you can't melee with it, nor can you crouch, right? The pulver is good, but it has a lower rate of fire than what most assault weapons have, and it has a higher recoil, right? So if you can't really deal with the recoil, you might have an issue with it. The Stova is good, but it's pretty bulky, and actually, you know, a lot of people have their own preferences with regard to the sights, but if you try to put on an ACOG sight or some other type of sight, it's really going to be bulky, right, and kind of hard to see. But it's pretty good because it pops off a lot of rounds. You can do a lot of good things with it. But actually, you know, I won't really talk too much about the Stova. I'll just go ahead and upload some of that Stova action up one of these days. So as far as weapons are concerned, yes, you'll have some weapons with some advantages, but they all have their limitations, right? And that just comes with that individual weapons' properties. All right, so enough about that. I need to go ahead and get some more. And actually, speak of the devil, here's a Stova right here. Right, and the Stova is pretty good, but you know, another bad thing about it, it takes forever to reload. If you guys noticed, when I had to reload it took forever, right? And actually, another thing that I really need to get a lot of practice on is once I see that I've run out of rounds, I need to get more practice at hurrying up and switching over to my sidearm, right? Because I see a lot of guys who are really good with that. I mean, it's almost like on instinct. And this is kind of the downsides to not playing first-person shooters for a long time, right? And for a lot of you guys that know me primarily for Dark Souls, you know, I wasn't really playing any other games than Dark Souls. So when I first came over to Killzone, I was sucking for a little while, right? Because I'm kind of like, man, you know, I'm kind of like out of practice when it comes to first-person shooters, right? So it took me about a good week or so to get a little more familiar with the game itself, you know, because even though I was a lot more familiar with Killzone 3, you know, each new installment to a game, you know, it kind of has different mechanics, right? You can see this in a lot of games. Now, there's some games that the same mechanics seem to carry on, but there was a little, you know, few more mechanics, different feel to it, and I had to get used to it. And in addition to that, I've been away from first-person shooters, right? And with me being away, I also had to familiarize myself. Now, one thing with those grenades that I've noticed for a lot of you guys that may be new to Killzone, or perhaps you've noticed this yourself, sometimes people, and actually I'm kind of guilty of it myself, it's almost like when you see someone throwing a grenade at you, like your first instinct in some cases is to move backwards, right? But that's one thing you don't want to do. One thing you need to do, and actually I need to get a lot more practice at it myself, is run forward, right? For some odd reason, whenever I see someone kind of tossing a grenade at me, I'm thinking they're throwing it at the ground, and I end up moving backwards. And when I move backwards, I always die. But in most cases, when I run forward, right? Because they're actually throwing a grenade past me. And I've noticed this in seeing how I've done this myself, right? It'll be times where I'm throwing a grenade, and instead of throwing it downward, I would throw it a little past them, right? So one thing I really need to get a lot of better on with regard to this game is avoiding those grenades, right? Because those grenades, I'm not going to say they're OP, but I mean, it is what it is, right? It's just a matter of me getting better at reacting to them. All right, so it looks like we are doing the beacon theft mission, and we are tied up at this point, so we still have a little more time. Right, so what I'm trying to do at this point is try to flank them, because I know they're trying to defend these points because okay, so no one picked up the beacon yet. So I know they always have guys on all these different sides trying to defend the beacon, right? And for a lot of these guys that are kind of new to the game, you know, they do have these pre-made maps, right? And it's for beginners, and I forget the name of it, but it's labeled like newcomers or something like that. And that particular war zone was created by Guerrilla Games, right? So for a lot of you guys that may be getting your PS4s sometime soon, that guy must think he's in Call of Duty. I don't know why he was jumping. But anyway, for a lot of you guys that may be new to Killzone, and the 12 versus 12 war zones may be a little too much, and maybe the 7v7s might even be a little too much, right? Because you're new. Guerrilla Games has a war zone titled New Recruits, right? And I would suggest for a lot of you guys that are brand new, let's just say maybe you're new to Killzone, or let's just say you're new to first-person shooters, I would suggest for you to go ahead and try out the New Recruits Warzone, right? Because there's a lot of inexperienced players. As a matter of fact, people with a certain amount of experience, you can't even get into those war zones because they have point limitations, right? So if you guys are relatively new, you're kind of interested in the game, but you don't want to get thrown into a situation to where you're basically sinking or swimming, right? Or they're basically throwing you into the sharks. Go ahead and check out the New Recruits war zone. As a matter of fact, shout out to Bruno. He kind of joined me in the war zone the other day. He was like, dude, I don't know what's going on. Right, and I meant to tell him, like, well, I mean, you know, with you starting out, you might want to try out the New Recruits, but, you know, seeing that he was on my friend list and I know him a lot from Dark Souls, it was cool for us to join up with each other. But I was just thinking to myself, like, you know what, it's probably better for him to start up with the New Recruits, maybe for, you know, perhaps for a couple hours to probably get a little feel, not only for the mechanics, but also for the objectives. Right, because if you're foreign to the game, right, because in other words, I only know about like search and destroy, beacon retrieval, and a lot of these because I'm familiar with Killzone. Now, granted, other first-person shooters may have similar missions, but they may be titled differently, right? So even if you're familiar with FPSs, you may not necessarily be familiar with the titles, right? So I think trying out the New Recruits Warzone will be best for new players, right? Not only new to first-person shooters, but also new to the Killzone franchise. So that's pretty much it for this particular video. Just a bunch of rambling, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. Martyrs Brigade is out.